Summer is almost here, and that means we gotta get some theme park visits on the books. If you have been outside recently, or if you have windows and can look outside, then you might very well be aware that we've been dealing with some heat waves here in Europe. So, yeah, I do say summer is almost here because summer vacation is almost here. Summer in and of itself, though, seems to have arrived, which means that I'm in my full theme park trip planning mode. And rather than keep that to myself, I thought I'd share that with you guys today. But first, hi, I'm Sarah. This is Factor Nostalgia, a weekly podcast where we discuss everything theme park then, now, and when. We do deep dives, we do tips and tricks, and we share favorite lists like today, which might not even be a favorites list, but more of a suggestion list. Anyway, if this is the type of content that you like and you would like to hear more of, then there are several ways to support the podcast. But the best way to do this is to become a Patreon subscriber, a patron, if you will. The link to the Patreon page is in the show notes, as it always is. And if you head over, you'll see that there are several tiers in which you can become a member, one of which is free, which of course allows you a little bit of access, but not everything. The paid tiers means that you pay a small monthly contribution to the podcast, and in return, you get access to a couple of perks. The most important of which is a theme park loving community that I am currently in the process of building. The goal is to create a spot where you can meet like minded individuals, share thoughts, feelings, ideas, and everything else really around theme parks. This monthly contribution will help me keep the podcast alive. So I'll use it to pay for things such as hosting costs and things like that. You are not financing my theme park trips, I promise you. With that being said, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled episode and talk about some of these theme park visits that we might want to do over the summer. Now, if you've been listening for a while, then you know that I'm a pass holder to Efteling and that I already have some Disneyland Paris trips planned for later in the year, not in the summer, which, given the weather reports I've been seeing, is probably a good thing, especially with young kids. So I'm not going to include those two because, obviously I'm going to go to Efteling. I have been to Efteling already in the summer, and you guys know that. So I'm not going to include that one. What I want to do with this episode is focus on the smaller parks. Now, a lot of them are going to be in the Netherlands because for me, that's within driving distance and doable within a day. Other important context to know is that I have two young kids. Again, if you've been listening for a while, you probably know that I have a 2.5-year-old boy and a 3-month-year-old girl. Now, the 3-month-old is not going to have a lot of say in where we go. It's just important that I have spots where I can sit, feed her, change her, things like that. Preferably also, where her dad can change her and things like that, because not all theme parks, believe it or not, have changing tables in both bathrooms. Anyway, that's just some context for the types of destinations that I'm looking at. What's also good to know is I'm going to be discussing which park that's going to be, why that one, um, and how realistic it is that I'm actually going to make it out there this summer, which in turn also means that, the ones that I don't get to visit, or even the ones that I do get to visit, I would love to hear from you guys. If you have visited or if you're planning to visit, why or why not? Um, share your experiences, your thoughts, your opinions. It's always interesting to know. See, this is what I mean with I'm trying to build a theme park loving community where we can talk about stuff like this and get recommendations from each other. Now, I've also talked before about wanting to visit Toverland, and I'm planning to go this year, but it might not be over the summer. And I'm not sure if I can bring kids, yes or no, because, it's probably going to be around Halloween season. And I don't know how good of an idea it is to bring a toddler. So there's that. However, if that had not been the case, then Toverland would be top of my list. Now, I've talked about Toverland a little bit in a recent episode, talking about their 25th anniversary, where they came from, where they are now, possibly where they're going. They have some big ambitions. And as far as I can tell, they really, really want to make all that happen. So that's pretty awesome to see. So if you're interested in a Toverland visit, I would highly recommend that you check out that episode as well. I'll link it in the show notes so you can find it more easily. And now let's get to the actual toddler friendly list that I have right here in front of me. The first thing on my list might immediately be something that some people might say isn't really a theme park, and that's something called Avonturenboerderij Molenwaard. Now, Avonturenboerderij translates to adventure farm. This is more of a petting zoo farm type situation than a theme park. but they do have attractions and rides and things like that. It's located in Groot Ammers, which is pretty close to where I live, except that you'd have to cross a river and we can't do that. So we have to drive all the way around, which makes it an hour. It's not super convenient, but at the same time, it's doable in terms of distance, especially with kids. So this is high on the list. Matter of fact, the trip is already planned and I already have tickets. So all I have to do is reserve a date, really, and then we can go. Why am I including it in a theme park podcast if it's a farm with a couple of attractions? Because it's really themed after a couple of characters. The main two are two little, it's a boy and a girl, Fien and Teun. Fien is the girl, Teun is the boy, for those of you who don't speak Dutch. And they kind of run this little farm. Other characters are, for example, Mike and Molly. These are not the sitcom characters that you're currently thinking of. These are two little sheep who are also part of the farm, and they're in one of the themed areas of the farm. There are a couple of more themed areas, all themed around, life on a farm, what can happen on a farm, what do people do on a farm, things like that. You have the opportunity of spending the night there. That's not what we're doing since we're relatively close, and also I only got tickets for a day. But, if we like it and the kid likes it, I say the kid because, again, the 3-month-old isn't going to be able to do a whole lot. By then, she'll be 4 months, but still, we might be back and we might do the overnight thing, but we'll see. We'll see how we feel after the one day. Now, while we're on this subject, I also want to mention the Tovertuin. This is a relatively new park that I also really want to visit with the toddlers. And the reason why I'm naming it now is because both the Avonturenboerderij, so the adventure farm, as well as Tovertuin, the magical garden, I guess, are owned by the same studio. Now they are themed a little differently. So the adventure farm has Fien and Teun as their main characters, whereas Tovertuin, the magical garden, has Woezel and Pip. These are two little dogs with their own backstory. Before they were part of this park, they already had their own books, movies, things like that. So it was a pretty well established franchise before it became part of this little theme park. Woezel and Pip in particular have their own backstory, or not even backstory, more origin story. So these characters were thought up by a Dutch celebrity, I guess I could say. Her name was Guusje Nederhorst, and she was an actress and a singer. And unfortunately, she never really got to witness the success that became Woezel and Pip because she passed away from breast cancer. Not long after that, her husband actually founded a foundation that was, to keep the memory alive of the woman who created Woezel and Pip. And a chunk of the proceeds of all the books, products, and everything, related to Woezel and Pip that were sold, a part of that would go to children in need, really, to come to help children who need it. My first encounter with Woezel and Pip was obviously when I had kids, when I had my first one, is that they were on the diapers. So you know how sometimes these diaper brands will do a collaboration with, some type of franchise that appeals to kids. So one of our grocery stores here, drugstores really, drugstores. One of our drugstores here sells diapers with Disney characters on them. And for a very long time, a different drugstore had Woezel and Pip on their diapers. They don't anymore though. So all that to say that these two characters are kind of like the main draw in the Tovertuin. Um, Friends of mine have already been there with their kids, and it's essentially a very big playground with um, attractions, yes, but they're not. You shouldn't think it's not going to be like Big Thunder Mountain or anything like that. They are attractions, but they're kind of like slightly bigger than on a playground. You know what I mean? But, the kids had a great time. There's also an opportunity here to spend the night in different types of accommodations. I looked that up too. And if you're staying like on weekdays, it's pretty affordable. But the thing is, my husband does not work in education, so he can't really go on weekdays. So we're planning to go also for just one day, and then we'll see how much we like it and if we want to do a longer stay at any point. Now, these past two parks that I mentioned specifically, they also themselves say that their target audience are kids like from 0 to 8. So they're really not trying to compete with parks like Efteling, Toverland, things like that. They really have their own niche, which to me sounds really good with the age that my kids currently have or will have the next couple of years, I should say. Now, with those two parks out of the way, let's move on to the next one, which is Bommelwereld. That is a new park. It opened recently, just this past October, actually. So, October 2025. It's a small park. It's completely indoors, so that, allows it to be open all the time. And as the name implies, it is themed after a book series, really two characters from a book series called Olivier B. Bommel and Tom Poes. These are, Dutch sounding characters because they are. There's about 20 attractions. I've heard mixed things, though. On the one hand, people do sort of like it, but they can't really see the theme come through. And what I mean by that is that some of the criticism that has also been published in like local newspapers and stuff, they mentioned that the author of these stories, of these comics, um, often infused social commentary into the stories, and it was very much against, things like overconsumption and superficial entertainment and things like that. And here we are in a theme park. I'm not sure how valid this is. I haven't been there, and the last time I read any of these comics was a longer time ago than I would care to admit. Plus, I think given the target audience, it's a very easy way for them to get acquainted with these characters and possibly, get them interested in reading the stories when they get a little bit older. That being said, I don't know for sure when I'm going to be able to visit because this is a little bit further away. It's literally tucked away in a corner of the Netherlands in the Achterhoek, which, carries that name for a reason. So this is going to require a bit more planning because it's not a day trip with kids as small as ours. But at the same time, I don't think it's something that you can spend 2 days at. Although at the same time, I don't think the kids really care. Um, but it would depend on if we can find something else to do in the area. And I think if I look a little bit harder than I have, I might. But I haven't so far because it's probably going to be a little bit too hectic for us to fit that into this summer. But I would very much like to go with the kids. Then another one pretty high on my list is Sprookjes Wonderland, Fairy Tale Wonderland. And you might think, well, isn't that very similar to Efteling's Sprookjesbos, their fairy tale forest? It might be. I haven't been. But from what I can tell, in a way, yes. But it's all just the fairy tale theme. They have walk around characters, apparently, and they do have some small scale attractions. So it's honestly looks like a great time for young kids. And I'm into fairy tales, so why not? This is in Enkhuizen, which for me, again, is a little bit further away, but probably still doable if we plan the day right. For the next one, we're veering away a little bit from the theming and we're ending up at Linnaeushof, which is a very big playground, essentially. I think it's Europe's biggest playground. I have not been here for, again, decades. I think I've only been there once as a kid. Might have been a school trip. I don't even remember. That would be weird because it's pretty far away from where I went to school. Anyway, I don't remember. I've been there once. It was fun. And from what I can tell right now, they have a specific area for younger children, so toddlers. They even have some stuff for the very youngest of kids, so under 1 year olds. And when it's warm out, they also have some water activities and attractions. I don't know if you can call them attractions, but play systems or, I'm not entirely sure what to call them. Um, but it looks pretty versatile. So they have something for kids of every age. And it's doable. It's within driving distance. It's about an hour for me. We're very centrally located in the Netherlands. So a lot of things are like an hour's drive for me. Um, so yeah, that looks pretty good to me. And I think it's a relatively easy thing to do with your kids, because it's not actual attractions that can overwhelm these kids and stuff like that. This seems like a very doable option. Am I going to do it this summer? I don't know. It depends because it looks like something that I would want my toddler to bring a friend along. So I'm going to have to check with the friend's parents, which I will do. And if we go, I will let you know. I will not be posting pictures because it's about the kids, but I can report back on how it was. The last one I want to mention is I don't know, this definitely doesn't qualify as an amusement park, I think, but it's well done, so I want to mention it anyway. It's Plaswijk Park in Rotterdam. Now, this is essentially a very big playground park type situation, I've been here once before. I do plan on going back this summer. And when the weather's nice, they do have a very big area with water stuff where kids can play. It's pretty big. Also very busy when it's warm out. But yeah, they have outdoor stuff, they have indoor stuff, they have animals that you can go and see. They have a little train that goes around the park. So it's kind of a mashup of all the things that small kids like. And for me, it's pretty close to home. I think it'll probably be about 30 minutes from where I am, maybe a little bit more. And I went to university in Rotterdam and everything, so I do consider it home. So I prefer going there anyway. So I'm a little bit biased when it comes to that. I lived there for a very long time as well. And because of that, one tip I can give you is that if you have any other means of getting there, public transportation or whatever, do that because parking is a nightmare. All right, that is it really for the parks that I wanted to highlight that are very suitable with small children and reasonably close if you're in the Netherlands, depending on where you are in the Netherlands. But it's a small country, so let's not exaggerate. I do want to make some honorable mentions here. One of which is a park that I'm actually going to visit this summer as well, which is Plopsaland, Belgium. I've talked about the park before in the broader context of the parent company, Studio 100, Studio 100. I'll link to that in the show notes because they're doing really well. It's a super interesting company to me, and they own several parks. So, you can find out more about them there. So that's an honorable mention. Another honorable mention that is very high on my wish list, but that I haven't had the opportunity to actually plan a trip to is Paradise, which is also in Belgium. It's a little bit further down in Belgium for me from the Netherlands. And it's actually a zoo. But the reason I wanted to list it here is because they do themed areas really well from what I've heard and seen on their website and from I heard from other people who have gone that it looks amazing and it's just really well done. So this is a place I would like to go to and it would have to be an overnight stay because it's a little bit further away and it's also pretty big. So I want to make sure that I get to see it all. So an overnight stay would be best, but it's pricey and it just requires more planning than I've been able to do. So than I've been able to do for this, I should say. One last honorable mention here in the Netherlands is Zand, which is for me again pretty far away. It's about 180 kilometers from where I am. So um, depending on traffic, that might just take a long time to get there. But this is actually one of the most affordable theme parks I've heard in Europe, but definitely around here, because the entrance fee is relatively low and it includes food and drinks. Now, don't expect actual like cuisine or, anything like that. It's pretty simple theme park food, but, if you're budget conscious, then it might be, worth considering. I just double checked. It's like at least a 2.5 hour drive. So that might be a little bit much for a day trip. But I definitely wanted to throw it out there because it looks really good. It's reviewed really well. And like I said, it's good for if you're budget conscious as well. So definitely worth consideration on your list, particularly if you want to do more outings over the summer. Something like this might be a welcome change compared to some other theme parks. Right. So this was the list I had. This episode might have not been for everybody. So if you're still here, I appreciate you. And I hope you got some information from this that might be usable to you. If it's not your own kids, maybe it's, nieces and nephews or neighbor kids, or, if you're chosen aunt or uncle for a kid, then these might be worth considering for you. Did I miss any of your favorites? Do you have any other tips for me? Because, they're always welcome. These kids are going to be young for a while. So any other, recommendations are welcome. Please, if you have any, leave them in the comments or drop me a message through any of the well-known channels. All the ways to contact me are in the show notes as always. All that's left for me to do then is to ask you for three small favors. One is share this episode with somebody who might be interested in it. Anybody, with kids or anybody who wants to be, the favorite uncle or aunt. Second is please leave a rating or a review if you've enjoyed this episode. If you haven't, then I don't know, I guess no need to, but also you're still here. So I still appreciate you. Um, Leave a rating or review on whatever podcast player you're using to listen to this. And while you're there, three, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes. And with that, I'm going to thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.